محمد وآل محمد صلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم. تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون. لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون. إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلا الأذقان فهم مقمحون. وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فاغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون. وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. إنما تنذر من اتبع ذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم. إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين. واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون. قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء أنتم إلا تكذبون. قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين. قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب عليم. قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون. وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين. اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون. وما لي على أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون. أتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون. إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين. إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون. قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين. وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين. إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون. يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون. ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون. وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون. وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون. وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملت أيديهم أفلا يشكرون. سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون. وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مسلمون. والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل السابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشاء نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آيات من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا ونطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا مهزرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قول من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أحد إليكم يا بني آدم أن لا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أزل منكم جبلا قصيرا أفلم تكونوا تأكلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لتمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لتمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانة فما استطاعوا مزيا ولا يرجعون ومن نعمره ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يأكلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند مهزرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناهم من نطفة فإذا هم خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحيي الذي أنشاها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. كل أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات. سورة المباركة الفاتحة.
محمد وآل محمد صلوات. O Sakina, O Sakina, O Sakina, O Sakina, O Sakina, O Sakina. I see you lay there with such a blank stare. Your clothes are all torn, so dirty and worn. Your tears have dried, waking you up I have tried. It is time to go home. You cannot be alone. O Sakina, O Sakina, O Sakina. They took everything, leaving us with nothing. They slapped your face as we watched in disgrace. But now we are free, so let's go home with me. Please wake up, my love, so I can give you a hug. O Sakina, O Sakina, O Sakina. Your Baba is gone, your Chacha is gone, Ali Akbar has gone, Ali Asghar has gone. Let us make our way home so we can openly mourn. We will shed our tears without any fears. O Sakina, O Sakina, O Sakina. मंजर बड़ा अजीब है, शबीरो मुस्तफा। मंजर बड़ा अजीब है, शबीरो मुस्तफा। मक़तल की सिमत जाने लगे शाह करबला, और नींद से सकीना के चेहरे पे शर्म था, और नींद से सकीना के चेहरे पे वर्म था। गोदी में लेके शैने कहा अब न हो फुगा, मेरी सकीना को नींद आ रही है, मेरी सकीना को नींद आ रही है। बानो ये आबिद को बतला रही है, मेरी सकीना को नींद आ रही है। कह दो हवाओं से आहिस्ता आए, कह दो परिंदों से हुलना मचाए, कह दो अंधेरों से वापस न जाए, कह दो अंधेरों से वापस न जाए। शायद गमों की घड़ी जा रही है, मेरी सकीना को नींद आ रही है। शायद रसन की अज़ियत हुई कम, मातम करो बीबियो शोर मातम। सज्जाद जंजीर बोले न इस दम, सज्जाद जंजीर बोले न इस दम। शायद गमों की घड़ी जा रही है, मेरी सकीना को नींद आ रही है। जिंदान का दर अब जोर से न खोलो, ए पहरेदारो अब आहिस्ता बोलो। तुम भी तो जागे हो, कुछ देर सो लो। तुम भी तो जागे हो, कुछ देर सो लो। बाबा की खुशबू इसे आ रही है, मेरी सकीना को नींद आ रही है। ये शामे गरीबा की जागी हुई है, तमाचों के डर से नहीं सो सकी है। जरा अब गले से रसन जो खुली है, जरा अब गले से रसन जो खुली है। सुकून से जो अब सांस ले पा रही है, मेरी सकीना को नींद आ रही है। मैं खुश हूँ कि सोएगी मेरी दुलारी, मैं कुर्बान इसके, मैं अब किसके वारी। बहुत सह चुकी दुख ये गाजी की प्यारी, बहुत सह चुकी दुख ये गाजी की प्यारी, मगर नफ्स कुछ और बतला रही है। मेरी सकीना को नींद आ रही है, बानो ये आबिद को बतला रही है। मेरी सकीना को नींद आ रही है। बर मुहम्मद व आले मुहम्मद सलवात। कुल अरवाहुल मोमिनीन वल मोमिनात। सूरतुल मुबारकतुल फातिहा।
Said Bilal, my brother, my elders, brothers and sisters. First of all, I'd like to thank Said Bilal for being with us for this past few days. Thank you so much, and we are very thankful, and inshallah, even looking forward to see you again. In short, may Allah increase in your blessings, being from your family, away from your family, and He may continue to increase your rizq in you being the source of Azadar, inshallah. Let us all recite 5 times, I am Yujibu, especially for all the safety of the Muslims, all those in Palestine, Lebanon, and everywhere else, for this well-being of all those who are sick, near and far, and for all those in need of du'as. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء 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 اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. حبيب خداك ختم الأنبياء محمد وآل محمد صلوات.
Surah Al-Fatiha. Bismillah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله والصلاة والسلام على إمام القبلتين ونبي الحرمين وأفضل الثقلين وجد الحسن والحسين الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الصادقين والذين ذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على صاحب الدعوة النبوية والثولة الحيدرية والإسمة الفاطمية والحلم الحسنية والشجاعة الحسينية والعبادة السجادية والمآثر الباقرية والآثار الجعفرية والعلوم الكاظمية والحجج الرضوية والجود التقوية والنقاوة النقوية والحيبة العسكرية والغيبة الإلهية. اللهم عجل فرجا وسهل مخرجا. أما بعد، فقد قال الله في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وجعلنا منهم أئمة يهدون بأمرنا لما صبروا وكانوا بآياتنا يوقنون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. For the love of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. For the love of Fatima al-Zahra in particular, a second salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. For the hastening of the reappearance of the master of our time, a louder salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. As the days of Safar, they continue, and as we approach the day of the Arba'een of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, a subject of relevance within these days is to reflect upon the legacy and the life of Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam. And in particular, the legacy and the life of Imam Zainul Abidin after the day of Ashura. You know, if I were to ask the audience that what do you actually know about the life of Imam Zainul Abidin, you find that unfortunately in many communities, if you ask this question, the majority of their knowledge, it starts and it ends with the day of Ashura. That he was ill and he was sick upon that day and he didn't fight on that day. You know, even within our traditional nohas, latmiyas, marsiyakhanis in the Urdu and the languages which stem from Urdu and are related to it, we find that the title that we give most often to Imam Zainul Abidin is Bimar Imam. That Imam who was sick on the day of Ashura. And without a doubt, you know, this line, when we say it, it invokes emotion. It's a line which is powerful in musibah. But this title is not found in any hadith for Imam Zainul Abidin. You find the title Zainul Abidin, the endowment of the worshippers. And you find Dul Tafanat, the one who would cut the calluses from his forehead when he would do sajda. All of these different titles are there for the Imam, but Bimar Imam is not a title. And what this shows is that, yes, even though he was ill on the day of Ashura, his illness was not a defining feature of his life. There is a legacy which he has given much more, which is beyond that. And indeed tonight, the subject of analysis is to examine that legacy of Imam Zainul Abidin from the day of Ashura until his martyrdom on the 25th of Muharram in the 95th year after Hijrah. The day of Ashura, of course, occurs in the 61st year after the migration of Rasulullah. And what this gives us is a period of 34 years where he is the Imam, and a period of 34 years of him carrying out different tasks after the day of Ashura. And you find when you look at this legacy of Imam Zainul Abidin and what he accomplished, there is one ayat of the Quran which manifests the life of Imam Zainul Abidin. And that verse is the verse which I recited at the beginning of this lecture. You know, the word Imam occurs in the Quran in 12 different places without any coincidence. But there is only one ayat in the Quran where Allah, He speaks about the criteria and the qualification of an Imam and a guide. And that is this verse over here, chapter 32, verse 24. And Allah, He says, وَجَعَلْنَا مِنْهُمْ أَئِمَّةً يَهْدُونَ بِأَمْرِنَا, that we have made from amongst them imams who guide by our command. لَمَّا صَبَرُوا, because they are patient, وَكَانُوا بِآيَاتِنَا يُوقِنُونَ, and because they are certain in our signs. So over here within this verse, when we look at an imam or a guide, we see, number one, an imam is somebody who guides other individuals. Number two, patience is seen in the qualities of an imam. And number three, we find that an imam has certainty. And you find all of these three different areas, guidance, patience, certainty, they manifest in the life of Imam Zainul Abidin in three specific areas. The certainty of an imam is seen in the ibadat of Imam Zainul Abidin. And the patience of the imam is seen in the remembrance of his father. And the guidance of Imam Zainul Abidin is seen in the du'as of the imam. You know, just very quickly to give a brief biographical sketch of the imam before I come towards this, is that Imam Zainul Abidin is born in the 38th year after Hijrah on the 5th of Sha'ban. This would mean that the first 2 years of his life were spent with his grandfather Amir al-Mu'mineen, and he dies in the 95th year after Hijrah. You know, the father of Imam Zainul Abidin is very well known, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. But the question is that who is the mother of Imam Zainul Abidin? You know, the mother of Imam Zainul Abidin was a lady by the name of Shah Zanan. And it is stated that the Shah Zanan was the daughter of the last of the Persian kings of the Sassanid dynasty. That the final king, Yazdijurd III, or Yazdigurd III, you find that there were two daughters of his that were brought towards the Arabian lands. One of them marries Muhammad bin Abi Bakr, and the other marries Imam al-Hussein, and that is the mother of Imam Zainul Abidin. And it's stated that the mother of the Imam passes away shortly after giving birth to Imam Zainul Abidin. You see, when we see such an upbringing for Imam Zainul Abidin, without a doubt, you find that the remembrance of Allah and the worship of Allah is something which is a part and parcel of his being. You know, the Quran, it says to us, you and I, وَعْبُدْ رَبَّكَ حَتَّى يَأْتِيَكَ الْيَقِينَ, that worship your Lord until certainty comes or until death comes. You know, the majority of the Quranic commentators, this ayat, the word certainty, they have understood it as death. Because at the moment of death, everyone is certain. A believer is certain when he sees the face of Ali ibn Abi Talib. And the disbeliever is certain when you find that the promise of Allah ended up being true. But what this ayat is showing is that, oh human being, if there is a shortcoming in your worship on the flip side, if there is a moment where you are not able to worship, then perhaps a cause of that is a lack of certainty in God. You know, if I told you that I'm going to call you at 5 p.m., you find that because you know me as a tangible human being, because you have seen me, you have interacted with me, you find that you will go and you are more likely to answer that call when I call you. But over here, if one has certainty in the existence of Allah and the blessings which Allah bestows upon us, you find that an individual will be more engaged in that worship. You know, this Imam Zainul Abidin, they would say that you are an individual who is seen to prostrate and do sajda in a great amount. That he is Sayyidul Sajidin, the best of those who do sajda. They say that why is it that you do this? That how are you able to do sajda to this extent? You know, as I mentioned, that one of the titles of Imam Zainul Abidin was Dhul Tafanat. You know, the word tafanat, linguistically in Arabic, it refers to those calluses which are on the knee of a camel. Because when a camel sits on the ground, the body weight of the camel is upon its knees when it's sitting over there. And naturally, when you're sitting in the desert, there's going to be calluses on that animal. The reason this title was used for Imam Zainul Abidin is that he would do sajda and he would prostrate to such an extent that twice a year those calluses on his forehead he would cut. So someone, they said that, oh, Imam Zainul Abidin, how are you able to do this? What is your secret? The Imam, he says, oh man, if you recognize whom you are doing sajda before, you would never raise your head from prostration. In other words, if you recognize that this individual, this entity, is the one who is the key holder to all of the blessings in my life, you find that the way you approach him will be different. You know, naturally in our lives, when we approach our boss, even though that individual is just a medium, we approach him very differently. And the reason we approach him differently is because this individual controls an important facet of my life. But you find this reality Imam Zainul Abidin is saying is that if you have certainty in God, it will manifest in your worship. And this is something which we see in the life of Imam Zainul Abidin. You know, Imam Zainul Abidin, one day, it's stated that the Imam is in a state of prayer. And they say that, oh Sajjad, your son Muhammad al-Baqir has fallen into a well. Imam Zainul Abidin, he doesn't hesitate. He continues with that salah. So they say that, why is this man continuing with his salat? We'll wait and we'll ask him. After Imam Zainul Abidin finishes that prayer, they say, O Zainul Abidin, did you not hear us that your son has fallen into a well? Imam Zainul Abidin says that I don't have any shortcomings in my affairs with Allah. And if I don't have any shortcomings in my affairs with Allah, then Allah will take care of my affairs. So they go and they run towards that well. They see that Imam al-Baqir is sitting on top of the water of that well. And they bring Imam al-Baqir outside of that well. You know, one of the features of Imam Zainul Abidin that we see in this type of recognition of Allah is that there has been no doctrine, there has been no charter of human rights which is as comprehensive as the Risalatul Hukuk of Imam Zainul Abidin. You know, other charters of human rights, whether it's the Magna Carta, or whether it is anything which has been published by the United Nations in modern years, you find at most, they speak about the right of a government towards the subject. They speak about the right of a human being towards another human being. But when you look at Imam Zainul Abidin and his Risalatul Hukuk, which is his treatise of rights, Imam Zainul Abidin, he speaks of the right of Allah. He speaks of the rights of even the limbs of the body of a human being. And you find this is something which is not present anywhere else. This is only present with Imam Zainul Abidin. And in that regard, for example, he mentions the right of the tongue. He says the tongue is an organ which you should consider too noble to have obscenities and obscene things that come from it. You see, this tongue of a human being, when I mention the act of ibadah, is in the life of Imam Zainul Abidin. We know that ibadah is of different types. Ibadah and worship does not simply mean that you have a tasbih in your hand, your beard is long, and you're upon the prayer mat. But one form of ibadah is your character and your akhlaq as well. And in many ways, that is the greatest form of struggle for a human being, to struggle with their character. You know, Imam Zainul Abidin, yes, on the day of Ashura, he didn't fight. But everything he did after the day of Ashura was jihad and struggle in the way of Allah. You know, to the extent that one day they're in Medina, and they say that there's a man in Medina to Imam Zainul Abidin. Imam Zainul Abidin, he goes and he gives water towards that man. You know what they say after that? They say, O Zainul Abidin, do you not know who that man was that you gave water towards him? Imam Zainul Abidin, he says, what that man did was out of his character. But what I have done is out of my character. That individual was Hasin ibn Numair, the killer of his brother Ali Akbar alayhi salam. For Imam Zainul Abidin to show this level of character is nothing less than struggle. You know, another way that Imam Zainul Abidin, he showed what worship is that one form of worship is to stand in front of a tyrant and to speak. You know, when you look in the Quran, in Surah Ar-Rahman, we find Allah, he says, خَلَقَ الْإِنسَانَ عَلَّمَهُ الْبَيَانِ. That as soon as he mentions that I have created you, O human being, Allah says, I have given you the ability to express yourself. And it is only the human being who's able to express his inner thoughts in an articulate manner. And through that speech, you find that he is able to move things which otherwise can't be moved. You know, at the end of the day, when we see the destruction of millions and millions of lives, for example, when those 2 atomic bombs were dropped, you find the source of that was what? It was the command of a tongue which led to destruction. And that's why when Amir al-Mu'mineen would speak about the tongue, he would say that in terms of size, it is a small organ. وَجُرْمُهُ كَبِيرٌ, but in terms of the harm it can cause, the harm it can cause is something which is great. Sometimes, you know, the word kalam, the word for speech in Arabic is the word kalam. And the word kalam, originally, it refers to an arrow piercing something. Sometimes that harm which a physical body can't do, you find speech is able to do that harm. But on the flip side, you find that speech throughout history has been used in ways that individuals who you would imagine that they are not able to do anything for their situation, they're able to use their speech to completely change that situation they're in. And in this regard, we see Imam Zainul Abidin does this time and time again after Kerbala. You know, Ahlul Bayt, they reached Kufa on the 12th of Muharram. And for 1 week, they remained in Kufa. When they were in Kufa, there were several dialogues which occurred with Imam Zainul Abidin and Ibn Ziyad. In one of those dialogues, when Imam Zainul Abidin enters into the court of Ibn Ziyad for the first time, Ibn Ziyad says that, what is your name? He says, my name is Ali ibn al-Hussein. The moment Imam Zainul Abidin says, my name is Ali ibn al-Hussein, Ibn Ziyad says, Qatalallah Ali ibn al-Hussein. That Allah has already killed Ali ibn al-Hussein, referring to his brother Ali Akbar. The Imam over there, he replies in a manner that even though that I am in chains, I am in ropes right now, I will show you that who I am. He says, Bal qatalahu nas. It wasn't Allah who killed my brother, but rather it was the people who killed him. At that point, Ibn Ziyad, he reiterates, Bal qatalahu Allah. No, it was Allah who killed him. Imam Zainul Abidin, he reiterates one more time. And then after that, he says, O man, innal qatla lana aada, wa karamatana min Allahi ash-shahada. That to be killed is something which is normal for us Ahlul Bayt. And our honor from Allah is ash-shahada and martyrdom. You see, Imam Zainul Abidin, he demonstrates his strength through the use of his tongue. And that's why you find that, O human being, if Allah has given you this blessing, you find that use it in the way that Zainul Abidin has used it. You know, in a separate occasion, it's stated that when Imam Zainul Abidin, he's on his way towards Damascus, and they enter into Damascus, and that occurs on the 1st of Safar or the 2nd of Safar. A man, he comes and he says to Imam Zainul Abidin, that, O individual, I thank Allah that He has allowed Yazid to conquer you. Imam Zainul Abidin, he replies to the man, Hal qarat al-Quran? That, O individual, have you ever recited the Quran? The man says, yes, I've recited the Quran. The Imam says, have you read the verse of the Quran where it says, قُلْ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا إِلَّا الْمَوَدَّةَ فِي الْقُرْبَى, that I ask for nothing except love for my family? The man says, yes. The Imam says, نَحْنُ الْقُرْبَى. After that, he says, have you read the ayat of the Quran, وَآتِ ذَا الْقُرْبَى حَقَّهُ, that give rights towards your kinfolks? The man says, yes. He says, نَحْنُ الْقُرْبَى, we are that family over there. Then he says, have you read the verse in the Quran that 1/5 goes to Allah and His Prophet and that qurba, that progeny? He says, we are that progeny. And then he recites the ayat of the Quran, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ أَهْلِ الْبَيْتِ وَيُطَهِّرَكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا. He says, نَحْنُ أَهْلُ الْبَيْتِ, we are that Ahlul Bayt of Rasulullah. Then after that, you find another example of this ibadah, which is seen in the speech of Imam Zainul Abidin, which demonstrates his legacy after Kerbala, is that Imam Zainul Abidin, he goes into that court in Damascus. You know, whenever anyone speaks, to be comfortable is something which is important for a person who is giving a sermon. That if you're ill, if your voice is not with you, it's something which impacts the sermon. But Imam Zainul Abidin in that court with his arms tied, with him in front of him, the head of his father. And Yazid, he takes a stick and he begins to hit the teeth of Imam al-Hussein. At that point, it's stated that when Imam Zainul Abidin is in that courtyard, even before he begins to speak, he shows line after line which demonstrates the power of speech, and it demonstrates who he is. It's stated that when they were in there, Yazid tells an individual to go on the pulpit. In front of the Ahlul Bayt of Rasulullah, a man, he goes on the pulpit, he begins to curse Amir al-Mu'mineen and Imam al-Hussein, and he begins to praise Yazid and Muawiyah. At that point, Imam Zainul Abidin, he says, Ayyuhal Khatib, Ishtarayta Ridal Makhluk Bisahat al Khaliq. That you are purchasing the pleasure of the creation at the cost of the pleasure of God. In other words, this life is a life of 50, 60, 70 years. And within this life, what you have done is you have sold what God has given towards you in terms of pleasure. And you have used that to pleasure the creation of God and to please the creation of God. And then after that, he looks towards Yazid and he says, Yazid, أَأَذَنْ لِي حَتَّى أَسْأَدَ هَذِهِ الْأَعْوَادِ. That, oh Yazid, give me permission to climb the structure of wood a'awad. He doesn't call it a mimbar. The reason he doesn't call it a mimbar is because a mimbar is what Rasulullah would sit upon. Now from that spot, Amir al-Mu'mineen and the grandson of Rasulullah are being cursed. From that spot, lies are being spoken. That in reality is not a mimbar. A mimbar is that spot where the fadail of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad is spoken. And a mimbar is that spot from where truth is spoken. Yazid, he says, no, I will not give him permission. At that point, Imam Zainul Abidin says, oh Yazid, I will speak some words. فَأَتَكَلَّمَ بِكَلِمَاتٍ فِيهِنَّ رِضَى اللَّهِ. I will speak words within which the pleasure of Allah is there. You know, as Yazid was denying Imam Zainul Abidin from getting up to say that sermon, the people, they began to notice that he is not allowing him to speak. And they say, oh Yazid, allow us to hear what this man wants to say. Yazid says, Innahu min Ahlil Bayt. This individual is from the household of the Prophet Muhammad. These are those individuals that when their mothers breastfed them, didn't give just milk, but they gave them knowledge when they were fed. He says this individual will not get off the mimbar إِلَّا بِقَدِيحَتِي وَقَدِيحَةِ Abi Sufyan, that the only way he'll get off the minbar is if he destroys me and he destroys the entire family of Abu Sufyan. And after that, Imam Zainul Abidin, he begins to speak. And the riwayah, it says, فَحَمِدَ اللَّهَ وَأَثْنَى عَلَيْهِ, that he begins with the praise of Allah. And then after that, it states, وَخَطَبَ خُطْبَةً أَبْكَى مِنْهَا الْعُيُونَ, he gave a sermon by which everyone begins to cry. وَأَوْجَلَ مِنْهَا الْقُلُوبِ, and everyone's hearts, they began to quiver when they heard the words of Imam Zainul Abidin. And as he stands over there, he says, أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ, that, O people, أُعْطِينَ سِتًّا وَفُضِّلْنَ بِسَبْعٍ, that us, Ahlul Bayt, have been given 6 qualities, and we have been preferred by 7. أُعْطِينَ الْعِلْمَ وَالْحِلْمَ وَالسَّمَاحَةَ وَالْفَصَاحَةَ وَالشَّجَاعَةَ وَالْمُحَبَّةَ فِي قُلُوبِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. The first thing which Allah has given us. In other words, it's not saying we attain them ourselves. There is an element that God has given them towards us. The first quality by which you will recognize us is by our knowledge. That Allah has given us ilm which is unparalleled. You know, before Imam Zainul Abidin gave a sermon, Sayyida Zainab gave her sermon. And at the end of the sermon of Sayyida Zainab, Imam Zainul Abidin, he looks towards his aunt Sayyida Zainab, and he says, أَنْتِ بِحَمْدِ اللَّهِ عَالِمَةٌ غَيْرْ مُعَلَّمَةٌ وَمُفَاهِمَةٌ غَيْرْ مُفَاهَمَةٌ. He says that you are that learned lady that no one had to teach you. In other words, this household is a household which practices on the teachings of the religion. And this household is such a household that Allah has blessed them in many regards. That number one, He has given them knowledge. And over here, when we listen to these qualities that Imam Zainul Abidin is saying, that Allah has given Ahlul Bayt, it's a point of reflection for us. Because each of these qualities, they naturally flow from one another. And they are a package which completes one another. You know, the first thing the Imam says is that we have knowledge. But then the second thing he says, أُعْطِينَ الْعِلْمَ وَالْحِلْمَ, that Allah has given us forbearance. You know, the difference between sabr and hilm is that sabr is of many types. I can be patient when it comes to happiness, that I remain within the bounds of celebration. I can be patient in hardships. But forbearance is a type of patience in regards to interactions with other people. The first thing the Imam says that Ahlul Bayt have is knowledge. But if somebody has knowledge, but they're not patient with other individuals, what is the point of that knowledge? In other words, you're a knowledgeable individual, you're a successful individual, but if you're not able to tolerate other individuals, nobody will want to come around you. So what is the point of that knowledge? The third thing that is given is generosity. That when one has knowledge and he has forbearance, he should want to be able to do things for others. You find this step. Then after that, it stated that eloquence, that yes, once you have knowledge and you are able to tolerate others and you have the desire to give towards others, there is a way in which you speak as well. It is not always that you present a message however you want to present it. Oftentimes, the way you say something is just as or even more important than what you are saying. So you find this is the next level. After that, bravery. You know, sometimes after you have all of these qualities, you're knowledgeable, you're forbearant, you want to give, you have generosity, you have eloquence and you want to speak. Sometimes you need courage to make a stand. Sometimes you need bravery to make a stand. You know, I mentioned some aspects of the historical analysis of Kerbala. But I mentioned yesterday that what makes Kerbala something which is special to us is that there are stories that keep principles alive through the remembrance of Kerbala. And one of those things that we see is that these are individuals who had bravery. You know, in today's world, bravery has a different image than in the classical world. You know, when you think of brave today, you think of a hard-hearted soldier or a war-tested or a battle-tested soldier. But you find when you look in the saga of Ashura, that's not bravery. Bravery requires compassion. Bravery requires principles and to stick to those principles. You know, when we talk about what it means to be a man today, in today's world, they say to be a man means not to express emotion. But when you look at Kerbala, the saga of Kerbala, there are grown men who are braver than you and I will ever be, who were crying on the day of Ashura. Imam al-Hussein himself cried. People like Abu al-Abbas. So you find bravery is something which is completely different than our understanding. And once this form of bravery is there, the Imam says the final thing that we are given is that Allah has placed our love within the hearts of the believers. Then after that he says, فُضِلْنَا بِسَبٍ فُضِلْنَا بِأَنَّ مِنَّا نَبِيَّ الْمُخْتَارِ وَمِنَّا الصِّدِّيقِ وَمِنَّا التَّيَّارِ وَمِنَّا أَسَدُ اللَّهِ وَأَسَدُ رَسُولِهِ وَمِنَّا سِبْتَ هَذِهِ الْأُمَّةِ. He says that I am from that household, that from us is Allah's prophet. And from us is the one who is a Siddiq, the one who is truthful. In other words, whom you claim to be Siddiq is someone else. And the one who is titled as Siddiq by Rasulullah is our grandfather Ali ibn Abi Talib. From us is Ja'far al-Tayyar. From us is Hamza, the lion of Allah and the lion of his prophet. You know, why does Imam Zainul Abidin mention Hamza? The reason he mentions Hamza is because he is reminding Yazid that you are from the offspring of that lady who chewed the liver of Hamza. And over here, coming from that offspring, you are preaching to us, the household of Rasulullah. He says, we are from that household, that Sayyida Shabab Ahlil Jannah, the princes of the youth of paradise are from our household. And then he says, Anabnu Makkah wa Mina, that I am the son of Makkah, I am the son of Mina. Anabnu Zamzam wa Safar, that the stream of Zamzam, the mountain of Safa, I am the son of that. In other words, all of these different sacraments which you hold holy, Makkah, Mina, Zamzam, Safa, our grandfather is the one who told you about that. You know, when Imam Zainul Abidin, he says this, he's giving them a reminder that, oh, Banu Umayyah, time and time again, you have been trying to lower the position of Rasulullah. You know, the majority of the hadith that we have until today, which disrespect Rasulullah, they come from the time of Banu Umayyah. And many of these hadith are found in sources outside of the school of Ahlul Bayt. For example, one of these hadith, which was concocted in the time of Banu Umayyah, it stated that after revelation came to Rasulullah, there was a period that there was no revelation. So you know what Rasulullah does according to this hadith is that, na'udhu billah, the Prophet, he goes on top of a mountain and he begins to contemplate suicide. These types of traditions are still there within the Muslim world. You find that source of these traditions is Banu Umayyah. And as Imam Zainul Abidin, he stands in front of Yazid, he is reminding them who my grandfather is. He says, Anabnu Makkah wa Mina, Anabnu Zamzam wa Safa, Anabnu man hamala rukna bi atraf al-rida. I am the son of that man that the stone inside the Kaaba, he carried it within his cloak. That it was carried by him, Rasulullah. You know, there was a dispute about that stone, that when it would be moved, each of the different tribes of the Arabs, they wanted to move that stone. So Rasulullah, he gave them a solution. He said, everyone will grab one corner of the cloth, and I am the one who will place that stone over there. Imam Zainul Abidin reminds, this is our grandfather. Anabnu man hamala rukna bi atraf al-rida. Anabnu khayri man tazara. I am the one who was the best, that when he would wear his clothing, his azar, I am the son of the one who was the best who would wear clothing. Anabnu khayru man inta'ala wahtafa. That when he would put on his shoes, he was the best of those individuals who would put on shoes. That he is reminding time and time again that what my grandfather did, even if it's something as trivial as putting on clothes or it's putting on shoes, my grandfather did it in the best of ways. Anabnu khayru man hajja wa labba. Anabnu khayru man. I am the one who is the best of those who went on Hajj. And I am the son of the one who was the best of those who did Tawaf. And I am the son of the one that Rasulullah, he took on Buraq on the night of Ma'raj. And in this manner, he gives virtue after virtue, and you find this sermon serves as a legacy of Imam Zainul Abidin. The second of the legacies of Imam Zainul Abidin, as I mentioned in the introduction, is that at one level, ibadah is seen as a legacy of Imam Zainul Abidin, which includes worship, which includes character, which includes speech as well. But another level of the legacy of Imam Zainul Abidin after Kerbala is the question as to how did Imam Zainul Abidin give guidance? Because when you look at Amir al-Mu'mineen, we have sermon after sermon from Imam Ali alayhi salam. But for Imam Zainul Abidin, outside of Kufa and Sham, we don't have any sermons. So the question is that how did he emulate and how did he spread the teachings of Ahlul Bayt in the religion? One thing which Imam Zainul Abidin would do, which is a controversial subject in the modern world, is that Imam Zainul Abidin would train and he would free slaves. You know, the issue of slavery, Islam did not end slavery. And that's something, when you look in the modern world, you find that it's something which isn't viewed as acceptable. That if you have a religion, which is a religion for every time period, why does it not make a hard stance and it ends slavery? One of the reasons is that when slavery is so embedded in an economic system, it takes time for those individuals to be assimilated into the rest of society. You know, the biggest medical crisis in the United States in terms of population, it occurred after the emancipation of slaves in the United States of America. Because you imagine that you have this massive population, they have known nothing except for slavery. Now this massive population is freed, they don't have anyone to provide them jobs. They don't have medicine, they don't have basic necessities. You find that it's going to create a crisis. So what Islam did is that it showed that our understanding of slavery is very different than how you understand it in the modern context. Because each ancient society had slaves, but slaves had rights within those societies. You know, in the Muslim world, there were even dynasties of quote-unquote slaves who were the rulers of the Muslim world. You know, the Mamluks who ruled in the Muslim lands were a subset of slaves. The Turks, you find that they come from slave offspring. But you know what Imam Zainul Abidin does is that he would train these individuals who were servants. And after training them, he would free them. To the extent that it stated that many of these individuals, they wouldn't want to leave the house of Imam Zainul Abidin. Because if you have an opportunity to be within the house of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, then what greater blessing is there than that within the life of an individual? But the final area that we see that Imam Zainul Abidin really spreads his legacy, aside from his stand after Kerbala and mourning for his father, and from training slaves, is the du'as that Imam Zainul Abidin leaves behind. You know, one thing which is very unique about Imam Zainul Abidin is that this book of du'as was written by Imam Zainul Abidin. You know, I always say this line, that in our school of thought, the two most important sources we have outside of the Quran is As-Sahifatu Sajjadiyya and Nahjul Balagha. But there is a big difference between Nahjul Balagha and As-Sahifatu Sajjadiyya. The difference is that Nahjul Balagha was compiled by a scholar, Sayyida Radi. But As-Sahifatu Sajjadiyya was compiled by Imam Zainul Abidin. And that itself is a massive difference, that Imam Zainul Abidin, he would give these du'as to his son Zayd, he would give these du'as to his son Muhammad al-Baqir. And when Imam Zainul Abidin would give these du'as, he would pose a dilemma for the government of that time. You know, the government of that time is not letting Imam Zainul Abidin speak, but at the same time they say they're Muslims. Can a Muslim stop another Muslim from making dua? If a Muslim stops another Muslim from making dua, it's problematic for them. So what Imam Zainul Abidin does is that in each of these du'as, he gives an entire lesson in Islamic thought. You know, the most famous translation of As-Sahifatu Sajjadiyya you can find today is the translation of William Chittick in the English language. You know, if you look over there, you find that each of the du'as there is an entire lesson. If you want to understand Allah, there's the first dua of As-Sahifatu Sajjadiyya. And if you want to understand who the Prophet was and the akhlaq of Rasulullah, dua makarimul akhlaq is there. But if you want to understand, for example, hardship, that how do I deal with hardship? And how do I express my sorrows, my grief, my pain towards Allah? Imam Zainul Abidin shows us that in the 7th dua of As-Sahifatu Sajjadiyya. And in this way, he covers many different topics. You know, in that 7th dua, Imam Zainul Abidin, he says, Ya man tuhallu bihi uqadul makarib. That, oh Allah, you are the one who unties the knots of those things which are disliked by me. Isn't it the case that when an individual is in difficulty, it's as if there is a knot which is tied? Imam Zainul Abidin is saying that, oh Allah, you are the one who unties that knot. وَيُقْتَعُ بِهِ حَدُّ الشَّدَائِدِ. And the blade, the cutting edge of hardships, Allah, you are the only one who blunts that cutting edge. You know, if you want one simple answer of what differentiates Ahlul Bayt's understanding of God from the philosophers, from many different individuals who have passed in history, one key thing is that Ahlul Bayt have presented God in the most personable of manners. That, in other words, they demonstrate through their words that if you want to have a personal connection with Allah, how do you speak to Allah? And how do you connect with Allah? And that's why when it comes to dua as a final point, they would say, ad-dua mukhul ibadah. That dua is the core of your relationship with God. You know, over here, we say that, you know, we have been taught that salat is the most important thing. And after that, things which are wajib are more important. But why is it that the Imam says dua is at the core of your relationship with God? You know, when it comes to other acts such as prayer, such as fasting, they have a structure. That there is an outward structure. You can't perform Hajj no matter how you want. But you find dua has a very personal nature. Yes, there's etiquette without a doubt. There is etiquette, there are ways that duas are elevated. But at the same level, dua at its core means to call upon Allah. The word dua comes from the Arabic word da'a. And at that level, the core of a human being's relationship is to speak with God. That even if you're not in wudu, even if you don't have the energy to stand upon that prayer mat, take a moment and just speak to God. And you find that itself is considered ibadah as well. And the core of that speaking and that manner to speak is seen in the life of Imam Zainul Abidin. But as I mentioned in this lecture, where we examine the legacy of Imam Zainul Abidin after the day of Ashura and his contributions, Without a doubt, one of those things which is a key contribution of the Imam is the way in which he would emphasize the remembrance of his father, Imam al-Hussein. It's stated that when Imam Zainul Abidin is in Medina, he sees a butcher cutting an animal. And he goes to that butcher and he says that, did you give water to this animal? Did you give food to this animal? Did you sharpen the sword? The man says that we are Muslim, of course we do these things. The Imam says that when they killed my father, they didn't sharpen the sword. And when they killed my father, they didn't give him food or water. In a separate occasion, it's stated that a man, he comes into Medina, and when he comes into Medina, he says, Ana al-gharib, that I'm alone. Imam Zainul Abidin, he looks at that man and he says, oh man, you say that you are alone. If you were to die today, would somebody put a shroud upon your body? And if you were to die today, would somebody bury you in the ground? The man says, without a doubt, people would do that. The Imam says that if anyone was gharib, my father Hussein was gharib. You know, yesterday as we remembered the Ahlul Bayt, we remembered the Musibah of Sham, and we remembered the martyrdom of the daughter of Imam al-Hussein. You know, after some time it passes, a point it comes when Yazid, he frees Ahlul Bayt. And Sayyida Zainab, she says that, oh my nephew Sajjad, before we go, give us a house to mourn in. Make this request from Yazid. So Yazid, he gives them a house. Ahlul Bayt, they gather within that house. And you find that all of the heads of the Shuhada are returned to the women of Ahlul Bayt. That Kulthum would take the head of Abbas, and Layla would take the head of Ali Akbar, and Farwa would take the head of Qasim, and then the head of a 6-month infant would come, and the Rabab would hold the head of that 6-month infant. After that, the head of Imam al-Hussein would come, and all of the women would stand, and they would mourn by saying, Wa Ghariba, Wa Husseina. You know, after that, Imam Zainul Abidin would make one request from Yazid, and he would say, oh Yazid, all of those items which were taken from us, return all of those items. You know, amongst those items which were returned was one flag. The moment that flag it comes, all of the women, they would remember about Fadl Abbas. Then after that, 2 earrings would come back. The moment those earrings would come, all of the women, they would look towards Rabab, because that girl who would wear those earrings was buried within that prison in Sham. After that, you find that one ring would come back. You know what ring this was? This was that ring which was on the body of Imam al-Hussein on the day of Ashura. And one man, he would say that everyone was looting the body of Hussein. Somebody would take the shirt of Hussein. Somebody would take the turban of Hussein. But he says that when I went to the body of Hussein, I wanted that ring upon his hand. But when I tried to pull that ring, it wouldn't come off. So that man, he says, at that moment, I took a dagger. I saw the finger of Hussein, and I began to cut the finger of Abu Abdullah. After that, the final thing which returns was a blood-covered shirt, that shirt of Imam al-Hussein. You know what Sayyida Zainab would do with the shirt? When Sayyida Zainab, she returns to Medina, she goes to the grave of her mother Fatima al-Zahra, that as she's holding the shirt of Imam al-Hussein, the riwayah, it says that she says, "Oh mother, whenever anyone goes on a journey, they bring something back with them, oh mother. But oh mother, the only thing which I have to bring back is the shirt of Hussein." That Sayyida Zainab would take that shirt and she would place it on the grave of Fatima al-Zahra. Ala la'natullah ala al-qawm al-dhalimin. سيعلم الذين ظلموا أيّا منقلب ينقلبون. Ya Allah, wherever the followers of Ahlul Bayt are in difficulty, help them. Wherever they're sick and ailing, cure them. Ya Allah, those who are madloom and oppressed within this world, wherever they may be, whether it is in different parts of the world, we pray that you free them and you help them with the hastening of the reappearance of the master of our time, Matam Hussein.
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. जब मुझे आपके कातिल ने है मारा बाबा, जब मुझे आपके कातिल ने है मारा बाबा, जब मुझे आपके कातिल ने है मारा बाबा, हर तमाचे पे सकीना ने, हर तमाचे पे सकीना ने पुकारा बाबा, जब मुझे आपके कातिल ने है मारा बाबा, जब मुझे आपके कातिल ने है मारा बाबा, आपके सीने पे आराम से सोने वाली, आपके सीने पे आराम से सोने वाली, सो के अब खाक पे करती है गुजारा बाबा, जब मुझे आपके कातिल है मारा बाबा, जब मुझे आपके कातिल ने है मारा बाबा, वो जो दुर्रा आपने तोहफे में मुझे बख्शे थे, वो जो दुर्रा आपने तोहफे में मुझे बख्शे थे, उसको बेदर्दी से जालिम ने उतारा बाबा, जब मुझे आपके कातिल है मारा बाबा, जब मुझे आपके कातिल ने है मारा बाबा, नोके नेज़ा पे उसे देखूं तो देखूं कैसे, नोके नेज़ा पे उसे देखूं तो देखूं कैसे, मेरा असग़र था मुझे जान से भी प्यारा बाबा, जब मुझे आपके कातिल ने है मारा बाबा, जब मुझे आपके कातिल ने है मारा बाबा, साथ रावारों के दोहराया गया है मुझको, साथ रहूं के दौड़ाया गया है मुझको, चूर जख्मों से बदन मेरा है सारा बाबा, जब मुझे आपके कातिल ने है मारा बाबा, जब मुझे आपके कातिल ने है मारा बाबा। या हुसैन
क्या ढूंढ रही है जंगल में सकीना, 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 अब्बास के बाजू या बाबा का सीना, क्या ढूंढ रही है जंगल में सकीना, क्या ढूंढ रही है जंगल में सकीना, कानों से छिलेगा है और आगे थी दामन में घबराई हुई बच्ची, ये कहती रही रल में है कोई जो मुझको पहुंचा दे मदीना, क्या ढूंढ रही है जंगल में सकीना, क्या ढूंढ रही है जंगल में सकीना, रन से असगर को ले आओ मेरे बाबा, सोना नजर आता है भाई के मेरे झूला, असगर के बहर अब मुझको नहीं जीना, क्या ढूंढ रही है जंगल में सकीना, क्या ढूंढ रही है जंगल में सकीना, ये शाम के जिंदा में दीवारों को तकती है, क्या सोच के ये जाने दिन रात से सकती है, बिछड़ी है चचा से जब से वो हसीना, क्या ढूंढ रही है सकीना, क्या ढूंढ रही है जंगल में सकीना, दुनिया से सितारे हैं भाई जो मेरे प्यास, जब तक नहीं लौटेंगे हम मेरे दरिया से घुटी जान, पानी नहीं पीना, क्या ढूंढ गई है जंगल में सकीना, क्या ढूंढ रही है जंगल में सकीना। पहुँचे जो शहबाला, बेटे की सदा सुनकर, देखा के रगड़ते हैं एरी को जवानत बई, नेज़े की अनी है और बेटे का सीना, क्या ढूंढ रही है जंगल में सकीना, क्या ढूंढ रही है जंगल में सकीना। अब्बास के बाजू है सीना, क्या ढूंढ रही है जंगल में सकीना। सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि मोहम्मद व आले मोहम्मद। एक इस्तिग़ासा पेश करना चाह रहा हूँ, साथ में पढ़िएगा इंशाअल्लाह। अब्बास 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 अलमदार, चलती है ये सांसें तेरे परचम की हवा से। अब्बास 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 अलमदार, अब्बास अब्बास टूटे हुए दिल को ही देता है सहारे, मुश्किल में चले आते हैं इस दर पे ही सारे, बेहतर नहीं कोई भी सकीना के चचा से। अब्बास 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 अलमदार, अब्बास अब्बास अलमदार, इस बार हमें भी जरा बुलवाइए मौला, इस बार हमें भी जरा बुलवाइए मौला, बेचैन है दिल आपको मालूम है आका, हम कैसे रहें दूर भला कैबो बला से। अब्बास 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 दर्द में ज़माने का नहीं है मेरे कोई, नौकर पे नजर रहती है हर लम्हा तुम्हारी, तुम मुझको बचाते हो मुसीबत से बला से। अब्बास अब्बास सलमदार, अब्बास 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 सलमदार, अज़लान दर हज़रत अब्बास पे जाओ, आसिम दर हज़रत अब्बास पे जाओ, हालात जो दिल के हैं वो गाज़ी को सुनाओ, पहले ही अता करता है वो हमको दुआ से। अब्बास अब्बास अब्बास, चलती है ये सांसें तेरे परचम की हवा से। अब्बास 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 अलमदार। सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि मोहम्मद व आले मोहम्मद।
अल्लाहुम्मा सल्लि अला मुहम्मद व आले मुहम्मद। अहसन।
السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء. السلام عليك يا خديجة الكبرى. السلام